So many times I said to myself how lucky I am to have you at my side. A kind and considerate man who I trusted entirely. How can the perfect man have got to this? How could you have betrayed me like this? How could you have brought these strangers into my bedroom?
We're going to take you to France next. And I should warn you, this is a really distressing story. A 71-year-old has admitted drugging and raping his wife over a period of 10 years. He also invited other men to do the same.
This case has captured the imagination of the entire world. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Many questioning now how such dreadful sexual violence could take place on such a big scale.
He was able to manipulate everyone around him for years without them having any idea of what was going on.
There are around 72 different men, but they can't identify all of them. Who are these men?
The majority of the accused, they still deny responsibility.
Il m'a pas annoncé qu'il allait droguer sa femme. Je sais pas pour les autres, mais pour moi, je suis pas un monstre.
The rest of the courtroom fell completely silent as Giselle Pelicot said she wanted to address her ex-husband directly.
I've covered many court cases of rape. You know, normally there's one accused, there's one victim, there's almost no one in the court. The courtroom is packed. There's so much that's so unusual about this trial. You have journalists in the back, and then lawyers and accused all around you. That's something I've never seen before. I've never been in a courtroom where you have the accused sitting all around you. It's particularly something that's this sensitive.
In September, a trial began in the south of France that would shock the world. At the center of it is 72-year-old Giselle Pelicot. Her husband, Dominique, has admitted drugging and raping her for almost a decade. Alongside him on trial are another 50 men, almost all accused of being recruited online by Dominique and filmed having sex with an unconscious Giselle.
Some of them have admitted to rape and pleaded guilty. Others have said that they were duped. They've said that they were manipulated by Dominique Pelicot into believing this was part of a sex game. Some of them have literally said, I didn't leave my house that day with the intention of raping a woman, and therefore I'm not a rapist.
Despite the video evidence against them, the level of denial has been aided by the current French law around rape, which has no mention of the word consent.
Many of them have hung their defense, and their arguments are that they never went there intending to rape her. They went there for a threesome. And time again, it's been interesting that the main judge has asked each of these defendants, you know, did you talk to her? Did you at any point get consent from her? And time again, they have all said, no, I did not talk to her. No, I never got consent from her.
But I think also the long-lasting effect of this will be conversations in France and across the world, really, saying, how did we get here? People really started to question how ingrained this misogyny was in French culture.
The world has watched on as in a matter of weeks, Gisèle Pelicot has become an iconic figure. Her stand has highlighted issues of shame, consent, and sexual violence.
They tell me I am brave. I say, it's not bravery. It's will and determination to change society.
You have to remember when you look at images of what's happening in the courtroom and outside that every single day Gisèle Pelicot is walking past the men who are accused of raping her. They have their hoods up, they wear masks, they wear balaclavas, they cover their faces as much as they can to hide their identities. And then you have this woman striding past them, entering the court to applause from the public gallery, and every day she has to find the strength to face them.
People across the world have shown their support for Gisèle Pelicot. From messages scrawled on walls near the courthouse to mass protests of thousands across numerous cities.
This is a story about domestic abuse writ large with rape, and then you have strangers involved. So I think the horror of that, the relatability of Gisèle Pelicot, and then, of course, her, I think, very brave and very rare decision to make the court case public. And because she did that, I think that is why this is now a global story.
While the story might have become global, no place has been as shaken as Mazan. Situated 21 miles northeast of Avignon, it's a small medieval village with a population of just over 6,000. It was here the Pelicots lived. And it was here that Gisèle suffered years of abuse.
Mais c'est une ville paisible qui a été anéantie par cette affaire, notamment parce que on assimile Mazan aujourd'hui l'effet des viols, quoi. Les gens en ont eu un peu assez d'entendre parler de cette affaire-là. Ils comprennent pas forcément pourquoi on associe le nom de leur commune dans laquelle ils aiment vivre à cette affaire de viol.
Locals have seen the story labelled on French news as the Affaire Mazan. The name of their home has become inextricably linked to the trial and splashed across the headlines.
Cette histoire, nous, mon Dieu, elle nous tombe dessus. Elle nous tombe dessus un petit peu comme une météorite, vous voyez? Parce qu'on n'aurait jamais pu penser, imaginer une chose comme ça.
One local is Marion, who runs a centre for victims of sexual violence.
D'un seul coup, ce petit village tranquille est vu par le monde entier, et des médias du monde entier viennent déferler, et on n'est pas préparé dans un petit village comme ça.
There's frustration that the whole village has been tarnished, with only 3 defendants, including Dominique Pelicot, being from Mazan. Most of the suspects lived within a 40-mile radius. But there is also tension and suspicion. While the police have identified 50 of the men filmed by Dominique Pelicot, another 22 suspects remain at large.
Et en plus, donc, c'est un village, voilà, je pense traditionnaliste, patriarcal. Donc, une affaire comme ça, touchant à des abus, des viols sexuels, la sexualité est tabou. C'est pas quelque chose dont on aime parler.
Regardless of where these crimes took place, so many are wondering how they could have happened in the first place.
The thing that's so scary about this is that it actually all came out effectively by chance. The moment this all starts to unravel for Dominique Pelicot is when he's caught by a security guard upskirting a woman in a supermarket in Carpentras.
Il prend des bonnes prises de vue, votre téléphone. Il était en train de filmer sous votre robe.
The actual video that Dominique took of him upskirting this woman in a supermarket emerges, and what we see is his face wearing a COVID mask, and his camera sort of just subtly slip towards her skirt. He's then confronted by a security guard.
Il prend des bonnes prises de vue, votre téléphone. Il était en train de filmer sous votre robe. Si, vous portez plainte. Il est en train de filmer sous votre robe le téléphone comme ça à l'instant. Vous portez plainte. Je suis là pour rigoler, je suis à la caméra, ça fait 4 fois. Allez, police direct.
When he's caught, it's the careless mistake of someone who has been meticulous in keeping secret his perversion, and it's almost like he's had this irrepressible desire to upskirt this woman.
Putain, il aurait fallu les retrouver, il y en a 3 autres. Vous êtes un gros dégueulasse, vous, en fait. Vous êtes un gros dégueulasse.
That's the thing that is so terrifying about this case, is that we know there are so many instances of sort of minor sexual crimes like upskirting that aren't investigated properly, and it was only because the police took this action that they found out the wider scale of what was going on.
When speaking to police, Dominique Pelicot claimed he had been overcome by urges as his wife had been away from home for a month. He said this is out of character.
Dominique Pelicot sits her down and breaks down, starts crying, and tells her, Gisèle, I've done a big mistake. He tells her, I've done something really stupid. I've been caught taking videos of women's crotch under their skirts, upskirting. And she pauses a moment, she thinks about it, 40 plus years together. She knows she can forgive him, but she says, you're gonna have to apologize to this woman. And if you do that ever again, I'm out. I'm leaving you. That's it. And he apologizes. He says it will never happen again.
At this moment, little does she know the scale of abuse that he's perpetrated over the last 10 years.
In 50 years of life together, he had never made any obscene gestures. I tell him, I will forgive you this time, but there won't be a next time.
Il prend de bonnes prises de vue, votre téléphone. Il est en train de filmer sous votre robe.
In September 2020, Dominique Pelicot is stopped by a security guard for upskirting women in a supermarket. Inspired by legislation introduced in the UK, it's an act that was made illegal in France in 2018.
The security agent plays like a very important role in this story, because if he hadn't insisted that the woman who was being filmed, without her knowing, press charges and go to the police station, she might have never done it. She might have thought, okay, this guy's a weirdo, but whatever, I'm just gonna go home and it's gonna be fine and I'm gonna forget about this incident and moving on.
Allez, police direct. Restez là, bougez pas. Madame, je compte sur vous pour porter plainte. C'est vrai?
But a video was leaked of that day in the French media, and you can clearly hear the security agent saying, Madame, you really need to press charges. Go to the police station. This is the 4th time he's doing it today. You're the 4th woman that this has happened to. You have to press charges. Yes, do it. And she did it, and that's what allowed, the investigation, the police investigation.
Images in the French media show how security cameras caught Dominique using a bag with a hidden device.
So at that moment, he's been arrested for, what some people would say is quite a minor sexual crime. It's a drop in the ocean compared to what's been happening over the last 10 years. Later, police find in the bag that he had with him a camera, a camcorder, and some condoms.
Dominique Pelicot, he had 2 phones that were in his bag. The police investigator got the phones, and on one phone, something caught his attention. There was only one app on the iPhone. It was Skype. And so he opened Skype, and he started seeing all these images, photos of women lying unconscious on their beds and naked men around them. And he decided to call his superior and to basically launch an investigation to try and find out what was happening.
All of Dominique's digital devices from his home were seized. On a USB stick, police discover a folder titled Abuse. Inside it, they found meticulously labeled folders containing more than 20,000 videos and photos. They appeared to show different men having sex with one woman.
At the time, police don't know what's going on necessarily. They don't really know what they're seeing. They notice that it's the same woman in every video, and then later they realise that that is in fact Pelicot's wife.
With so much evidence, the police faced a long investigation. Who were these men? Was any of this consensual? Could they really be watching one woman being subjected to years of abuse? They began to dig into the lives of Dominique and Giselle Pelicot.
They lived a very private life, quiet life, had 3 children, raised them in the Paris region, has 7 grandchildren. Then retired, moved down to the south of France. It's a pretty typical family. Nothing all that interesting or notable about them. I think that makes it super relatable.
For all intents and purposes, they had a happy retirement. We know that they had what she described as quite a happy and fulfilling marriage.
He made a lot of meals. I saw that as him being attentive. One night, he came to collect me at Avignon station after 10 days with my grandchildren. He had already prepared the meal. 2 plates were already in the oven. I put olive oil on my potatoes and he put butter, so it was easy to see which plate was his. We would have a glass of white wine together. Often, when there was a football match on TV, I'd let him watch it alone. He brought me my ice cream to bed, my favorite flavor, raspberry. I told him, "How lucky I am. You're a love. You really take care of me."
Despite their seemingly idyllic life, there were signs that something might be wrong.
As early as 2013, when the couple first moved to Mazan, Giselle was having issues with her health. So she was experiencing problems with memory loss. She was losing her hair, losing weight. I think it was in particular the memory loss that really started to flag to the wider family that something was going on.
It was this very awkward, weird sensation where she felt like she was losing conception of time and losing her life. Her life was kind of escaping her. So she went to see 3 neurologists. She thought maybe she had Alzheimer's.
At the time, Dominique was being incredibly supportive. So Giselle was sort of being driven crazy, wondering what was going on, but knowing that she had this very supportive husband beside her.
He's telling her that she's going to be fine, that she's got nothing to worry about. No one could tell her exactly what was going on. No one could think of really the unthinkable, and no one could imagine the unimaginable.
And it was only when Dominique was caught upskirting women in 2020 that suddenly things started to slip into place.
It's 2 months after Dominique Pelicot has been arrested for upskirting in a supermarket. Giselle has forgiven her husband. But then they are summoned to the police station.
They have a normal morning together in the house, and then they drive to the police station. Giselle Pelicot at this stage thinks that this is linked to the upskirting incident at the supermarket. There's this powerful moment when Giselle sees her husband Dominique being called upstairs and going up the stairs to be questioned, and she stays downstairs and they exchange a look. And at this point she has no idea that this is the last time she's going to see her husband.
The officer said, "I am going to show you some things which you will not find pleasant." He opened a folder and he showed me a photograph. It was hard to recognize myself dressed up in a way that was unfamiliar. Then he showed me a second photo, and a third. I asked him to stop. It was unbearable. I was inert, in my bed, and a man was raping me. My world fell apart.
You just can't stop yourself thinking, what would it be like to be Giselle in that moment? The idea that you could be looking at somebody who is doing everything for you, especially when you're in a moment of weakness and illness, and you feel so grateful to them, only for it to come out later that they've been betraying you in one of the most awful ways imaginable. It's really, really sinister.
It's also the night where she tells her children. She calls her daughter first, and she tells her, "I've got something horrible to tell you." And she tells her that her father had been raping her for many years and inviting unknown men to have sex with her while she was lying unconscious. And it's just an earthquake, a shockwave in the family.
Là, on est arrivé sur la commune de Mazan. Oui, Mazan, c'est une ville assez paisible, qui est très calme, où il n'y a pas non plus énormément de choses à faire. C'est plutôt reconnu pour être une petite commune provençale où il fait bon vivre. Là, on approche du lieu de... Il faut égarer les voitures, quoi. Près du stade qui est ici. C'est donc là qu'il faisait garer les hommes qu'il a rencontrés sur Internet. Et en fait, Dominique Pelicot venait les chercher, lui, directement, à pied. Et parfois, il arrivait même en robe de chambre. Il était en petite tenue et juste en robe de chambre par-dessus. Et il venait les récupérer ici. Ils partaient tous les deux à pied, direction de la maison. Ils avaient une centaine de mètres à faire à pied pour arriver ensuite dans l'impasse où se trouvait la maison du couple. Ouais, c'est là, c'est ici en fait. C'est ici que tout s'est passé pendant de 2013 à 2020. Dans un coin très paisible, très reculé, un pavillon plutôt agréable. Et c'est ici que se passaient ces scènes d'horreur pendant des années en fait.
Giselle has been confronted with videos showing her husband and other men having sex with her whilst she is sleeping. Investigators have to piece together how this could have happened.
What the police are able to establish from these videos is that this has been going on for a period of about 10 years.
In 2011, the Pelicots have been married for almost 40 years and are living in Paris. They are grandparents, living a happy, peaceful life.
Dominique Pelicot avait pris l'habitude depuis des années de faire la cuisine à la maison. Donc lui, il prenait malin plaisir à lui dire ma chérie, t'en occupe pas, moi je fais le repas, tu peux te reposer tranquille, etc.
Under the pretense of caring for his wife, Dominique started to drug her.
Pelicot was using a drug called Temesta, which is an anti-anxiety medication.
Temesta, otherwise known as lorazepam, is used to treat anxiety and sleeping problems. Dominique was using drugs he was prescribed by his doctor.
He would crush the drug, usually 3 pills, and he would mix it in the food. He often cooked with a lot of garlic, a lot of onion, spices, full of taste and fragrances to hide the taste and the color of the drug.
If he couldn't get it into her food at dinner, he would bring her favorite ice cream.
High dosages of Temesta can cause someone to lose consciousness.
He brought me my ice cream to bed, my favorite flavor, raspberry. I told him, how lucky I am. You're a love. You really take care of me. I never felt my heart race. I didn't feel anything. I must have gone under very quickly.
The drugs made Giselle fall into a deep, comatose-like sleep.
If you gave her the Temesta too early, she would wake up too early, and so you had to really time everything.
There are a couple of occasions which are documented on video which show Giselle waking up, and she still had no memory of this. Pelicot was working out how to keep her unconscious.
The next day, I was more tired than usual. But I was walking a lot and thought it was that.
After drugging Giselle, Dominique raped her. This abuse continued for 2 years. In 2013, the couple moved to Mazan. There, Dominique escalated his crimes. He began inviting strangers to take part.
Pelicot gave the men quite extensive instructions. He would tell them if they were driving, park their car at a nearby sports centre, so as not to arouse suspicion of the neighbours. He would tell them that they weren't allowed to wear aftershave. They shouldn't smoke before they came over to his home.
Dominique was precise and meticulous in his planning.
Et une fois qu'il arrivait chez eux, il y avait un mode opératoire bien précis. Il fallait se laver les mains à l'eau chaude, il fallait se déshabiller dans la cuisine, il fallait surtout ne pas faire de bruit.
And he even asked them to warm their hands on the radiator because cold hands might mean that Giselle would wake up.
Pelicot was doing absolutely everything he could to make sure that she didn't awake or have any suspicions in the morning about what had happened that night.
And I actually think he really enjoyed giving those men that protocol. It's, I'm in control of this person, I own this person. If you want access to her, this is what you need to do because I'm the gatekeeper.
It's quiet, they're whispering to not wake her up. This is someone who is literally in the deepest, deepest sleep.
She's like a corpse, basically. You know, it's a body, her jaw is kind of, you know, dropping on the side and she's snoring. They touch her, they do all these horrible things to her and she's not moving. She's obviously passed out and she's not responding.
Often she's fully naked, sometimes her clothes are pulled up and her panties are pulled down. The men come up behind her often. They're often masturbating to get excited. And you see men sticking their penises inside her vagina, her bum, her mouth, without ever talking to her.
These are scenes of barbarity. They regarded me like a rag doll, like a garbage bag. I am lying motionless on the bed, being raped.
The particular fetish really comes through. It's something called somnophilia. And that is the fetish or the desire to have sex with someone who is unmoving and unconscious. Sometimes it's quite disturbingly called the sleeping beauty fetish. This is a criminal act. He has not requested consent from his own wife to engage in this activity.
Police are only able to discover the extent of the crimes because Dominique had been filming.
Dominique Pelicot was really influenced by pornography. He was thinking himself as a movie director.
He videos the sex scenes or the rape scenes. There's videos that are on a tripod, but also often the videos come in close. You can hear her ex-husband directing them a little bit. He'll say like softly, softly. Or he'll use some vulgar terms about her like, stick it in the whore. Or, you know, she's such a whore, she deserves this.
There were hundreds of files, photos and videos of the abuse. Meticulously saved them and organized them and archived them.
Il découpait des séquences vidéo de chaque acte de viol qui était commis. Et il classait ça en fonction de scènes sexuelles, la durée, le jour.
He classified all the video the same way that you can find them on pornography websites.
This is someone who loves what they are doing so much that actually the planning, the organising, the very, very rich fantasy world that someone like Dominique would live in is a big part of who he was. He would have been thinking about this all of the time.
Over the years, Dominique started to look elsewhere, turning his attention to his own daughter, Caroline.
Among these thousands of photos, there were a number of her in her father's catalog. A number of them had been erased, but were reconstituted by digital experts at the police.
Dominique Pelicot shared different pictures of her and her mother online with really degrading comments about them.
There was also a photo montage of her and her mother coming out of the bathroom together that was titled, "My Slut and Her Daughter."
Photos of the Pelicot's daughters-in-law were also found.
On a retrouvé des photos, alors pas des photos endormies, mais des photos d'elles en pleine conscience, mais prises comme des caméras cachées dans la salle de bain alors qu'elles sortaient de leur douche, du bain, nues. Donc il y a Gisèle Pelicot pour toute l'horreur qu'elle a subie, mais il y a aussi la fille et les belles-filles.
He was that opportunist. He was the constant voyeur.
Dominique had kept this secret life hidden for almost a decade.
When they did psychiatrist evaluations, they didn't find any actual mental illnesses or serious mental disorders, but he has two identities.
He needed to be able to compartmentalize, to show up and act like a loving husband, to act like a loving father, so that really he could serve his greater purpose.
He was able to manipulate everyone around him, his children, their friends, his wife, for years, without them having any idea of what was going on.
For 50 years, I lived with a man who I never would have imagined could be capable of this. For me, he was someone I trusted entirely.
The deception continued as Giselle's health deteriorated.
The signs were there, but I never knew how to decode them.
He's seeing her getting really worried about her health. She's losing weight. He goes with her to see the doctors. He knows very well what's going on, and yet he says nothing.
It's so deeply sinister. It's almost like a nightmare. The thing she took as a sign of love during a period of weakness in her life was actually how he was able to perpetrate these crimes.
Dominique had masterminded a campaign of abuse and spun a web of lies. But he hadn't acted alone.
Maintenant, mon lien avec cette affaire se résume à une vingtaine de minutes où je me suis trouvé dans le domicile des Pelicot. 20 minutes.
The police investigation into the videos reveals the scale of the abuse against Giselle. They count nearly 200 instances of alleged rape carried out by Dominique Pelicot and 72 others. They are able to identify 50 of the men.
Ça m'a perturbé le fait que je ne sache pas comment expliquer que je me trouve dans cette situation. J'ai fait cette rencontre avec Pelicot qui était une explosion dans ma vie.
It's a complete cross-section of society. The ages range from 26 to 74.
Il y a un pompier, il peut y avoir un pigiste journaliste, des retraités aussi.
A soldier, a nurse, a prison guard, a baker. You have men who are unemployed, and they have actually been described by Pelicot's lawyer as an example of Mr. Average.
3 of the defendants are from Mazan itself, including a neighbor of the Pelicots.
One of them, Giselle actually recognized when she was taken to the police station.
I saw him now and then in a bakery. I would say hello.
He had once visited their home, pretending that he was going to see Dominique about his bike.
He enjoyed cycling and he had lots of cyclist friends. He came out to the Pelicot's house to see Giselle Pelicot in the flesh before coming back to allegedly sexually abuse her.
I never thought he'd come and rape me.
The neighbor denies the allegation.
On other occasions, he had told men who were eager to see her before coming to the house to meet them at the supermarket, or he'd send photos of her or videos of her so they could see, what she looked like before turning up.
The profile of a rapist is not someone who you meet in a car park late at night. A rapist can also be in a family or among friends.
The men traveled to Mazan from up to 40 miles away. Dominique had found a method of recruitment.
Once the police start probing and they ask the question, how are these men being invited to Pelicot's house, they discover that he's been using this website.
Dominique had signed up to a French chat room called Coco.
It was sort of advertised as a dating site of sorts, where male users had their accounts hosted in blue, women in pink, but couples were also in pink. From the outside, it seemed very innocuous, but inside, it was very different.
Behind its childlike interface, the chat room had a darker reputation.
It's a very famous website linked with a lot of criminal activities. A sort of free forum gathering pimps, pedocriminals, sex buyers, just being able to display sexual, intimate content about women, being able to chat about women in the most sexist, dehumanizing language too.
Coco allowed users to hide their real identity.
Dominique Pelicot used a pseudonym, and he found a chat room called Without Her Knowledge.
This is a discussion forum that essentially was about image-based sexual abuse.
C'est là-dessus qu'il invitait les hommes à venir le rejoindre pour discuter. Il avait comme nom, pseudo, couple cherche homme pour femme.
And he starts posting pictures of his wife in underwear on this site and says, me and my wife are interested in threesomes, would you like to be involved?
The conversation would continue in private, sometimes by text or on Skype.
Donc lui, il demandait des photos du visage et du sexe de l'homme. En échange, il envoyait des photos, alors des photos de sa femme.
The police say that Dominique's messages were clear. He invited men to rape Giselle whilst she was unconscious.
But we know that from one of the adverts, he actually wrote, "I'm looking for someone to abuse my wife asleep. You're like me, you like rape mode."
One of the defendants speaks on camera for the first time. He says that he was tricked.
Il faut dire qu'il m'a invité chez lui par un stratagème qu'il a élaboré. Déjà sur le site de chat Coco, s'il trouve un pervers, il va lui dire « je drogue ma femme ». Parce qu'il sait qu'il va accepter. Mais quand il elle est affrontée face à quelqu'un de normal, il va user de la ruse, ou dans mon cas, c'est la ruse. On a discuté un soir avant, et je ne suis pas allé parce que le monsieur, j'ai trouvé qu'il est très centré sur le sexe, alors que moi, je voulais parler connaissance, amitié, etc. Donc, le lendemain, il me renonce. Il s'adapte plus en m'ouvrant cette possibilité d'avoir une relation amicale. Et du coup, je lui ai fait confiance qu'il est porte-parole de sa femme et que, quand il me dit que sa femme elle est consentante, je lui fais confiance.
I never, even for a single second, gave my consent to Mr. Pelicot or those other men. They committed rape. Not for a moment did these men say to themselves, "Is there something wrong?"
I think Dominique really enjoyed what was essentially a really sinister recruitment process, finding those right people, and he was able to use an online space as a very clever filtering process to find those partners in crime.
One of the questions that has really stuck with me while reporting on this trial is how many men did Pelicot approach who said no but didn't report it?
Being online, it somehow removes any form of accountability. It can desensitize people as well from the harms that they are causing.
Dominique looked for men to help him take his crimes a step further.
The only man who is not charged with rape on Gisèle Pelicot is Maréchal. He's also known sometimes as Dominique Pelicot's disciple.
Jean-Pierre Maréchal and Dominique met on Coco.
Maréchal, a retired lorry driver, had learnt from Pelicot how to drug his own wife and in fact invited Dominique Pelicot over to his home to rape her and used the same sedation technique that Pelicot had been using on Gisèle.
Dominique Pelicot went to Maréchal's house and together they raped his wife while she was unconscious.
At court, both men admit the drugging and raping of Jean-Pierre's wife over a 5-year period.
And I think he enjoyed that. I think he liked this idea of teacher-student. And I think that's really what Dominique was trying to do, was to find other like minds who would engage in the same activity.
The 10 years of abuse came to an end when Dominique was arrested in 2020. Four years later, one of the most shocking trials in French history begins.
It's a very sort of tense atmosphere.
Dominique Pelicot, he's taken this position that, I am guilty. I have admitted to everything. They all knew, and I'm a rapist, and they are rapists too.
If the accused denies raping or denies penetration, then the court decides to show the videos.
Four years after Gisèle's world is turned upside down, the rape trial of Dominique Pelicot and 50 other defendants begins in Avignon. Arriving at court to applause each day, Gisèle is greeted by members of the public and the world's media.
One of the reasons why this case has received so much attention is the bravery of Gisèle in waiving her right to anonymity. And in doing so, this has allowed the world's media to be able to be there in the courts to hear this trial and publicise it to the rest of the world.
Usually trials that concern sexist and sexual violence in France, they are behind closed doors. When you open the door to this kind of trial. You know that your life will be exposed. You know that all of your life will be scrutinized. So that's a very brave thing to do.
I wanted all women who are victims of rape to be able to say, Mrs. Pelicot did it. We can do it too. When you are raped, there is shame. And it's not for us to have shame, it's for them.
Il n'y a pas un jour sans qu'il y ait des journalistes du monde entier qui viennent assister à ce procès-là, d'Angleterre, d'Espagne, même du Brésil, des États-Unis, d'Australie, du Japon. On a l'impression que ce procès parle à tout le monde, vraiment dans le monde entier.
Par Dominique Pelicot, eh bien, ce serait le procès.
The attention that Giselle has received as a result of this case is like nothing she's ever experienced in her life. She is a grandmother and a former logistics manager, and suddenly she has come to represent, for any woman who has ever been sexually assaulted, this paragon of bravery.
At court, Giselle Pelicot walks past just some of the 50 men, some in hoods, accused of raping her while she lay unconscious.
Il y a aussi la pression de tous ces individus qui sont derrière moi. Et je sens bien qu'on essaye, au niveau des questions, de me piéger, bien évidemment.
35 of the 50 men deny raping Giselle.
One of the challenges in prosecuting this case is that consent is not included within the legal definition of French rape law. There is a duty to prove that the accused had the intention to actually commit rape.
Some of them have literally said, I didn't leave my house that day with the intention of raping a woman, and therefore I'm not a rapist. A couple of them said that they first thought she was dead, but somehow they managed to reconcile that in their head and go ahead with what they planned to do. Others really feel like actually they're the victim in this crime.
This defendant denies the allegation of rape.
Je ne peux pas assumer que je suis allé avec l'intention de violer. Je ne peux pas assumer que je suis un violeur. Moi, je suis un enfant de femme battue. À l'instant même où j'ai vu Pelicot chez lui, il était effrayant, ce monsieur. Ça a réveillé en moi cette mémoire traumatique qui est en moi depuis l'enfance et ça m'a terrorisé. Au point où j'ai perdu tout discernement et je me suis soumis à ses directives, à ses ordres. J'arrive et il est déjà endormi, la dame. Et je demande la permission et je commence à la caresser, la dame, et elle bouge. Donc dans ma tête, je me dis, c'est le scénario qui m'a décrit, elle fait semblant, je me dis. Il me demande de faire ça, de faire ça. Il me demande d'introduire mon doigt dans son sexe. J'avais même pas le contrôle de mes doigts. Madame Pelicot, dans notre scène, elle était victime d'un viol. Moi, j'étais victime d'une terreur. On est deux victimes. Il y a un prédateur et deux victimes.
Many will, tell the court that something was off. All I wanted to do was to leave and I wasn't thinking. And so they have all these arguments, but no one thought of calling the police.
This defendant claims that Giselle must have noticed signs of the abuse.
J'ai du mal quand j'entends Madame Pelicot dire qu'elle croyait vivre avec un homme parfait. Non, il a détecté des choses qu'il a laissées passer par amour. C'est un message aux femmes. Même si vous êtes amoureuse, ne pardonnez rien, ne laissez rien passer.
Victim blaming, and that's something that often happens in cases of sexual abuse, is the victims is always questioned and somehow they're the ones to blame. Lawyers of the defense, they're asking her whether she's into threesomes or whether she's into swinging. No matter how many photos and videos she can show about what happened, they're still trying to blame her for it.
The comments that we heard in the defense arguments were archaic and shows also the height of misogyny and the utmost contempt for women. Some defendants used arguments saying, well, Dominique Pelicot, the husband, gave his consent, as if the wife was the ultimate property of her husband.
Whilst many considered the defense arguments to be deeply misogynistic, this defendant takes an opposing view.
Je suis quelqu'un de très féministe. Je suis peut-être plus sensible à la cause de la femme que beaucoup de féministes qui se déclarent féministes. Hein.
Dominique Pelicot, il avoue tout depuis le début. Il dit aussi que l'intégralité des accusés qui sont présents dans cette salle savaient tout. Savaient qu'elle serait droguée, qu'elle serait endormie, et ils savaient tous pourquoi ils venaient.
I can't recall another trial in France or anywhere else in the world where a rape case that has so much evidence. And in that weird way, you know, Gisèle Pelicot has the perfect trial because, unlike so many other women, she has proof of what has been done to her.
After Gisèle's insistence, the judge rules that the videos be shown in court.
Les premières vidéos qui ont été diffusées aussi dans la salle d'audience, il y avait une sorte de malaise général qui planait dans la salle parce que c'était pas évident de regarder ça avec la victime qui se trouve à 3 mètres de soi. Je préférais pas forcément les regarder quoi, parce que il y a certaines qui étaient au-delà de l'entendement quoi.
When you sit in that courtroom and you see one video after another of a woman snoring deeply, loudly, it's echoing in the courtroom. She was not a human being in that moment. And I think that's really shaken a lot of people as to how men see women.
Il y a eu des moments très forts dans cette audience, des moments assez lourds aussi. Je pense au moment où Gisèle Pelicot a parlé pour la première fois.
The rest of the courtroom fell completely silent as Gisèle Pelicot said she wanted to address her ex-husband directly.
So many times I said to myself, how lucky I am to have you at my side. How could you have betrayed me to this point? How could you have brought these strangers into my bedroom? I am a woman who is totally destroyed. I don't know if my whole life will be enough to understand.
Their daughter, Caroline, she feels like she's the forgotten person of this trial because the police found 2 photos of her lying down on a bed wearing underwear that she doesn't recognize. Putting 2 and 2 together, she's convinced that she was also drugged and abused.
Dominique tells the court he only took the photos of his daughter because he was being blackmailed, but offers no further explanation. He denies ever drugging or touching her, but Caroline is convinced he is lying.
She gets red, she's frustrated, she screams at him, you know, like you're a liar, you're gonna die alone. She was hoping, I think, for some sort of closure in this court case, but there's lots with her that's unresolved.
While investigating this case, police discover that Dominique's criminal activity dates back further than initially thought.
What's emerged is that Dominique Pelicot is potentially connected to at least 2 other crimes. These are cold cases from the 90s. In 1999, an attempted rape of an estate agent in Paris. And because of a DNA match, Pelicot has admitted that he was involved in this crime. There's another case which took place in 1991, and he is being accused of being involved in the murder of a woman called Sophie Nahm.
Sophie Nahm, elle va être violée, elle va être étranglée. La scène est épouvantable.
After a DNA match, Dominique Pelicot has admitted to the 1999 attempted rape of an estate agent in Paris. Investigators suspect he may have been responsible for a very similar case in 1991, the rape and murder of Sophie Narm.
Dans l'affaire de Sophie, nous n'avons aucune preuve de la participation de Dominique Pelicot. Mais dans ces deux affaires, on a des éléments qui sont dans le mode opératoire totalement identiques. C'est-à-dire qu'on a deux femmes qui travaillent dans l'immobilier, qui sont jeunes, à la vingtaine, qui vont faire visiter un appartement, qui vont être agressées à l'arme blanche, qui vont être violentées, qui vont être étourdies à l'éther, donc pour les endormir. Ces affaires peuvent apparaître comme étant liées, mais n'ont aucun rapport du point de vue judiciaire. Les investigations se poursuivent sur les deux dossiers et sur d'autres encore.
Police suspect Dominique may be linked to at least 5 further unsolved crimes.
Gisèle Pelicot is making history. She is leaving a legacy for all of us women.
Aujourd'hui, elle est véritablement un symbole de lutte contre les violences sexuelles. Alors je parle localement, mais je parle aussi en France, en Europe et dans le monde entier.
This trial has had a huge impact in the French society. A lot of protests have been taking place in solidarity with Gisèle Pelicot.
Je souhaite remercier toutes les personnes qui m'ont témoigné leur soutien depuis le début de cette épreuve. J'ai été profondément touchée par cet élan qui me donne une responsabilité. Grâce à vous tous, j'ai la force de mener ce combat jusqu'au bout.
This trial is a reckoning for France and the law around consent, but it's also allowing women to say, look, we're here to be believed. You know, even if it's harassment on the street, it's, you know, being inappropriately touched in a club. We're talking about this, we're saying it's happening. And Gisèle is standing up and saying, look, listen to us when we say what's happening.
Here they're asking 140 new measures to the government to fight against violence against women. They're asking that all the victims are believed because they're referring directly to the Gisèle Pelicot case.
94% of rape cases are dropped before they go to trial. So it means that there are hundreds and thousands of women in France that have received no justice for what happened to her. We're really hoping that this could be a game changer in the fight against rape culture and sexual violence in France.
For the local people of Mazan, this case has been particularly poignant.
Moi, je pense qu'il y aura un avant-après. En tout cas, nous l'espérons. Moi, en tout cas, je le vois ici dans les femmes que nous suivons. Ça leur a vraiment donné du courage.
Gisèle, c'est une femme formidable, très forte et courageuse. Elle nous montre l'exemple qu'on n'a pas à avoir honte et que nous aussi, on peut rejeter cette honte, cette culpabilité qu'on ressent.
Latika and Marion decided to organize a march in Mazan in support of Gisèle. Gisèle was so touched by this that she came to visit the association the next day.
Gisèle, après l'avoir rencontrée, ça m'a donné le courage de réouvrir une plainte qui avait été classée sans suite. Surtout de me battre et de se dire que c'est pas parce qu'on est victime qu'on est faible. On peut garder la tête haute, accuser sans porter la honte. Ça, c'est important et elle le montre bien d'ailleurs.
There are many women that are hoping that the significance of this case in France will be that the law changes. So it isn't the case that lawyers need to prove intent to rape a woman, and actually it becomes a form of you need to have sought positive consent.
After this historic trial, Gisèle, her family and the world await the verdict, which will be delivered in December. Dominique has admitted guilt, but the time he serves and what the judges decide for the other men is still to be determined.
I don't think we'll ever forget the name Gisèle Pelicot. She has become this iconic figure of strength and somebody who has really genuinely challenged rape myths that are still held in 2024.
I think what this case has the merit of showing is that rapists are everywhere in our society. And it kind of shies away from what was a common widespread idea that a rapist was some sort of monster that was alienated from society.
En ouvrant ce procès au public, Gisèle Pelicot l'a dit d'entrée, elle voulait que la honte change de camp, mais elle fait ça aussi pour que la société change, le regard change, pour que la loi change aussi, que le viol soit reconnu différemment, pour que la parole soit libérée et aussi que les victimes de violences sexuelles puissent s'identifier à elle et que ça serve un peu de leçon à tout le monde, en France mais aussi dans le monde entier.
Ce combat que je dédie à toutes les personnes, femmes et hommes, qui à travers le monde sont victimes de violences sexuelles. À toutes ces victimes, je veux leur dire aujourd'hui, regardez autour de vous, vous n'êtes pas seuls.